ho, ho. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Robert. And that's right, it's that magical time of the year.
It's the holiday, the holiday, holiday cluster, holiday cluster.
There's very few things I love more than Christmas, and 'tis the season to gift something special to your loved ones. And what better excuse to introduce them to the wonderful world of solo board gaming. And in case they're one of us already, you can just add to their shelf of opportunity. My goal with this list is to include something that caters to various folks based on their board gaming experience or their interest, plus a couple of bonus categories. I've also aimed to include games that should be currently available from online retailers and local game shops. I hope that you find the right gift for your loved ones, but you can always just treat yourself.
What do we treat ourselves to?
Deck builders,
Treat yourself.
RPGs,
Treat yourself.
Euros,
Treat yourself.
boss battlers,
Treat yourself.
tableau builders.
Treat yourself.
Alright, but before I start, let me just take this thing off first.
Where's your Christmas spirit?
Alright, fine, Arnold. Jesus.
That's better.
Alright, without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so let's start with what I refer to as the mere mortal tier. I'm talking about people that have either no board gaming experience at all, or at most, they've played Monopoly, Uno, or maybe Catan. Okay, so let's start with My City Roll and Build. So this is a very simple roll and write game where you roll dice to build a city, and it has a legacy element where the sheets where you build your city, they get progressively more and more interesting and complex with the mechanics that they include. Okay, so it's the perfect game to introduce to someone introduce someone to the roll and write genre, and also show them the legacy elements of a game. And it starts with very simple mechanics, and it gets progressively more interesting, like I said. So great intro to this genre, and very cheap. You should be able to pick this up for 20 or under. Okay. And if it doesn't work out, it also has multiplayer. And that's the case to almost every game here. If a game doesn't have multiplayer, I'll point it out. And you can always just at least count on if the if the solo element doesn't work out and they're not enticed by playing game solo, they can always probably play the multiplayer. So, but yeah, if a game is solo only, I'll point it out. Now, next we have Age of Civilization. So this you can buy on Amazon, usually very cheap for under 20, and this is a civilization themed worker placement game with the little meeples, and you have them do actions for you, and you see the rise and fall of civilizations. It's a very interesting game that accomplishes a lot with very few components. I really like what this gets away with, and it does have a beat your own score solo mode, and also scenarios. Okay, but you can also play this multiplayer as well if that fails. But yeah, for how cheap it is, that that can't go wrong with that, especially if you know that whoever you're gifting this to has any interest in the history or civilization. Very cute little game. Okay, next we have Gentle Rain. So this is the first edition. It doesn't have when you go buy it on retail or board gaming stores, it's not gonna look like this. It has more of a teal color to the box, but this is a very relaxing a tile placement game, and it might remind people of Carcassonne in a way. Okay, that's the closest thing as far as mass market games that I can refer or compare this to. But it's a very relaxing game with a very simple rule set, and I'm all for these types of nature games that have this wider appeal. Okay, I love the way that the rule book is written in this. Cute, very awesome little game, and you should be able to get it for 20 or under in most places. And there is this version on Target, I forget the name, but it has fancier tokens. Okay, I'll put up a picture. So if you want like a fancier version, there's that available too, or you can just buy the small box. Okay, so Gentle Rain, great relaxing game. And speaking of relaxing games, we also have Herbaceous. Now Herbaceous, I got rid of the box, but I'm gonna put up the box cover so that you know what the game looks like. And this is another nature themed game where you're trying to collect sets of different plants, and it has gorgeous, very nice illustrations. and it can also be played multiplayer. It includes a Gentle Rain is a solo only game, by the way. I forgot to mention that. So they're not, if the whole solo thing doesn't end up working for them, they're not really gonna have anybody to play it with. But we have Herbaceous as well, and it also plays great multiplayer too. Okay, but it has a very, very simple solo mode, and it's a very simple rule set as well. So if whoever you're gifting this to has no board gaming experience, you can't go wrong with this. Herbaceous is a really good option, especially if you know that they like card games or nature. This is a great little game. Okay, now maybe you have a friend who loves they love playing solitaire, right? As in with a standard deck of cards, a classic solitaire, right? So you can also have them upgrade their solitaire experience, and maybe they like RPGs or storytelling, and you want them to be able to do something a bit more interesting with their standard deck of cards or with their tarot cards. There's people that collect tarot decks. So if you know for a fact that your whoever you're gifting this to likes tarot decks or standard decks of cards, maybe you can buy them this book, this Dungeon Solitaire. You can buy this on Amazon, okay? And what this does is it lets you play a RPG dungeon crawler using just a standard deck of cards, and it's very, very well explained. It walks you through examples and everything. I have a full review, which I'll link if you want to hear more detailed thoughts, but this is very well made for folks with no board gaming experience, really. It explains things very, very well, okay? And the gameplay of what you can do with a tarot standard deck of cards or a tarot deck is very thematic and evocative, okay? So one of my favorite uses of a tarot or standard deck of cards, okay? Now, moving on, we have... let's go with Cartographer. So there's another verb and write game in the same vein as My City, which I just showed earlier. So now in this one, you're not going to be rolling dice, okay? You are actually flipping these cards, okay, these season cards, and you're actually drawing on a map, okay? Basically, you're drawing on a map, and you can make your drawing very simple, or you can be as detailed as you want it to be. I've seen people draw some gorgeous maps, okay? And you are basically going through seasons, and you're trying to score the most that you can at the end. And it has a great solo mode, but it also plays great multiplayer as well, okay? So this is my favorite verb and write game, all right? I love it. It kind of feels like playing Tetris in a way, and the illustrations are gorgeous. It's pretty simple to learn, and yeah, there's a lot of gameplay in this box. So it's always I could always play Cartographers. It's just a pleasure to play. Now, moving on, we have Turing Machine. So maybe you have a friend who they play Sudoku, okay, or they play those puzzle games every morning. Well, maybe they also might appreciate old punch card computers or programming or problem solving. So Turing Machine is a great game that gives you a nice little puzzle that you can solve on your own. So you're using these punch cards to try to deduct a sequence of numbers, basically, okay, or symbols. And it's very, very impressive what it achieves with those components, okay? And it plays great solo, or you can also play multiplayer as well, but this game made me feel all smart and stuff. So when you solve the puzzles, and there's various difficulties of logical puzzles that you can do if you want to go, with super difficult puzzles. There's all sorts of difficulties here. So if you want to start with simple, deductions, you get good at that, and then you progressively up the difficulty. But I really like what this game accomplishes. And there's other games in this deduction genre, but this is the first one I've played, and I was very impressed. And I've always been fascinated, even though I don't have any programming background, I've always been fascinated with the whole punch card computer concept, okay? So if you know friends who are, into that or appreciate that, they might like that game. All right, now moving on to a bit of a sports theme, okay? So maybe your friend or whoever you want to give stuff to, they are into sports. So there's a couple options here. First, I want to talk about the play.com website. So this publisher focuses specifically on creating sports simulation games. Okay, and I've only played Soccer Blast, but and this cover is outdated. I'll show you what the newer one looks like. I'll put it up on screen, but because there's an older version. But the way that I read the rules, especially obviously if the person is already familiar with the sport, these rules are very, very simple to learn. Okay, and basically what you're doing is you're rolling in charts. Okay, so you have these charts where you're basically simulating a football game in real time, and you're going minute by minute. And all of their games are simulated in the same fashion. You're going, it's like minute by minute action, and it's all using tables and rolling. There is some player agency with how you position your players, how you make your team, or how you arrange your team at the beginning of the game when you do replacements. But it simulates a game of soccer, and they have baseball, they have golf, they have basketball, and there's also team packs. So if you want to simulate a prior World Cup or something, you can actually generate players in. You can generate players like translate real life players into the system. So their systems are designed so that you can actually translate players here and have them exist and have matching stats. Okay. So for people that are fans of statistics, which I'm not that much into sports, but for sports fans who love stats and simulating or recreating World Cups, people who do so, who get that deep into these types of games, they say that it's very almost like scary how closely it simulates things compared to real life results. Okay, so very interesting system for sports fans. Okay, so play.com and whatever sports appeals to your loved ones, you're gonna find it there. Sport like soccer is pretty much the only thing that I've been interested in, so that's the one that I have. Okay, now you also, if you want to get if you want something that's not so stats driven like that, you also have baseball highlights. Now I don't have the box with me, but I'll put it up on the screen. But we also have this, and it's a deck builder. And I've heard that this also plays great multiplayer, okay? Which Soccer Blast also, you can play multiplayer, but I think it's best suited for solo. But this plays great multiplayer. There's people that their whole hobby is like playing this, and they have leagues. And it has an interesting like player drafting element, okay? But yeah, it's a relatively simple deck builder, and it's like a futuristic baseball theme where there's robot players as well. So if that element might be a bit silly for some people, and it might turn off some people who are not into this kind of stuff, just a heads up. But I think it's a lovely game, and it plays great solo, has a great solo mode, and it has that baseball theme. So if you maybe this will appeal to your loved one, all right, if you want to give them something sports themed. But great little deck builder. Next, back to the relaxing theme, we have Cascadia. Okay, so this is a great game that has a very relaxing nature theme. And what you do in it, you basically are creating this map and placing these animal tokens, and you're trying to gain meet the scoring conditions to gain the highest score possible. And it has a surprisingly clean and simple rule set. And it has an extreme amount of variety because of how many tokens it has. So it uses, these map tokens that there's tons of, and no two games will feel the same thanks to the setup. And there's various scoring conditions to keep things varied. There's score thresholds that you should read, like solo scenarios, basically, that you can go through. So a great relaxing theme. All right. So if you want like a nice relaxing game to give someone with a nature theme, this not only plays well solo, it's also good multiplayer as well. But yeah, Cascadia is one of my favorite games that does a lot with relatively simple components, simple rule set, and it has a very nice, satisfying puzzle. All right, and finally, we arrive at these two. So we have Wingspan on the left, and this is a nice little engine builder, okay? With a bird theme, and this game is a bit contentious. Some people don't really care too much for it. I do actually really enjoy it. So you're basically gonna be collecting resources to create a board of different bird species, and I like the puzzle. There's interactions between the birds with different effects, and when you play multiplayer, you can take advantage of other birds that people have on their tableau. But it has a nice automa. It simulates an opponent, so this might be a bit crunchier than other games that I've listed. Slightly crunchier still. It's not super difficult. So if they've played at least a couple other games, this should not be difficult to adapt. But there's a ton of videos out there on learning how to play. I would not say this is complicated to learn, honestly, but it plays really well. It's relaxing. It has gorgeous illustrations, and again, in line with that nature theme that I mentioned with many of the games. So for nature theme and a crunchy puzzle and a nice automa, so that they learn about these games that include a system to simulate opponents. This is a great example. So this is a great game to include in a library. But yeah, it'll be on the upper price of like $40+ depending if you get it on sale. Okay. All right. And finally, we have Everdell. So now, out of all the games that I've mentioned, I would say that this is probably the crunchiest. Okay. So this might be definitely the biggest leap compared to like Monopoly or Catan. So there are a lot of things going on with this game because you have in Everdell, you have this tree and this area where there's cards, and basically you have your own tableau and your hand of cards, and you're trying to create a 15-card city. So it's a tableau builder, just like Wingspan, but here you not only do you have your hand of cards, you also have your city, and you have this meadow. So there's lots of cards that you have to look at, and that effects that you have to keep track of, okay, because of how many cards you have to look at. But it's a gorgeous game component-wise with the different resource pieces that are not cardboard. They're like made of these different materials, like the pebbles, the berries, the acrylics, the wood, and the tree. I'm not a fan of the tree, but a lot of people eat it up. I actually don't play with the tree, but yeah, I really like Everdell. It's a fantastic puzzle. It has great card play and very satisfying combos, and it includes a solo mode. It's serviceable. I actually suggest that if you do end up gifting this to someone or yourself, try the unrigged fan-made solo mode. I prefer that one personally, but a lot of people just play the one out of the box and they're okay with it. And there's also Nightweave. Okay, if you now that is going to increase the price a lot, because if you want to buy this plus Nightwave, it's going to set you back about $100, because just this you're going to be paying probably $50 to $60 depending on where you get it. So it might be a bit hefty price, but I actually suggest, you're not sure if they're even going to like it, so I would not suggest you buy Nightweave immediately. Just try this, see if it's for you or for them. Maybe them on their own, if they like it, they can get Nightweave. But I've not gotten Nightweave yet, and I've enjoyed this a ton. I do plan to get it eventually, though. But yeah, a lot of people love the nature theme. The illustrations, the creators are just awesome. The component element is great. So Everdell is just a great game, and it plays great multiplayer as well. But it's definitely the biggest leap, I would say, out of this. But people might be so enamored by the illustrations and the components that they might get past that bit of a learning curve, and they might make the leap just fine into this level of complexity. But yeah, that's Everdell. And now let's move on to the next category. All right, so now I've put together a pile here of games that might appeal to those that enjoy RPG games or just enjoy the Dungeons and Dragons IP. Okay, so first let's revisit Dungeon Solitaire. There are going to be a few games overlapping between categories. This is one of them, and as I mentioned in the previous one, you can do a dungeon crawling experience here just with a deck of cards or a tarot deck. And there are instructions for a campaign. If you want, instead of doing one-off sessions, you can actually do a campaign with this thing. Okay, like a persistent campaign with game after the other. Okay, so this out of these, this is the most minimal one. All you need is this, a couple D10s, and some pen and paper, and you're gonna be good to go. So I had to include this in this category. Okay. All right. So next we have Dice Conquest. So In this game, so the game uses a set of RPG dice, which is really cool. And what you do is you have classes right? Like your classic D&D classes, like the wizard, the warrior, the thief. So you're gonna, and it includes various classes, right? So you're gonna create a party of characters up to 4 characters, and you're gonna go through a deck of encounters. And you need to roll all of the RPG dice, and you need to puzzle with them to allocate damage and also activate abilities from your characters. And you're gonna find classic D&D enemies like skeletons, rats, what have you. Okay, so it's like it packs like a mini D&D experience in a box, utilizing RPG dice. Love this game. Okay. And it can even be played multiplayer, plays a great solo, okay? And I actually suggest that even though you technically could play with less than 4 characters, I suggest that you play with 4, okay, to have the best chances. So, taking advantage of all of your character abilities. And the rule set is relatively simple, okay? So, yeah, a great little, it doesn't have like, D&D RPG elements, but it has a feel of it, which I really appreciate. I like this game, Dice Conquest. Great little game. All right, and along that, then we also have, speaking of dice allocation, we have a one deck dungeon. This is one of my favorite solo games, okay? And in general, for this category, I do also want to bring up that as far as like D&D likes and RPGs in board game form, it's a huge category, and I could make like a 20 plus list of these types of games, but I'm trying to keep it a bit more contained in the complexity level. Okay, because there's tons in that category, and also availability and whatnot. So I do want to bring that up now. One deck dungeon. So you control 1 or 2 characters. For solo, works really well with just 1 character, and all female cast. Okay, so you pick a character with classes like wizard, rogue, warrior, and you basically roll a bunch of dice, colored dice, and you allocate them, okay? And you delve into a dungeon, you open doors, you find like encounters, like traps or monsters, and you have to roll a pink, blue, yellow dice or black dice, and you allocate them to the numbers. And you're trying to allocate them in the most optimal way possible. And each class has abilities that manipulate dice, and there's a campaign element, and I think it works best when you do the campaign. So there's different bosses at the end of each dungeon, and each of them have a different level of difficulty. But there's a campaign sheet where you have your character, and at the end of a dungeon crawl, you gain experience points, especially the deeper you go, and if you defeat the boss, the more experience points you earn. So you get a stronger character, which will then allow you to visit try to beat a stronger boss. So I like the simple campaign element that this includes. And as you go through the dungeon, you gain items, you increase your stats. So I think this is a great little dungeon crawling experience in a small box. Okay, and this is a favorite among solo board gaming. It's definitely honestly can't go wrong with that game. It's one of my favorites of all time. Okay, as far as solo board games go. Now, I want to talk about Gloomhaven. Okay. It's one of the most popular games out there, okay, board games. And you have a small version that was released this year. It's by Joe Clipfell and Anna Valens. And Joe Clipfell is a great designer. He made one of my favorite games, Dragons of Etchinstone. And he worked on this miniaturized version of Gloomhaven. And now keep in mind that it doesn't include the rulebook. You have to go find it digitally. Some people might get caught off guard by that. I don't mind, but just a heads up, okay? So this captures a Gloomhaven experience in a small box, and it allows you to play with 1 character. And I've only played a few scenarios of this, but I quite enjoyed it. And as far as games that pack a punch relative to its size and also price, this is incredible, okay? Really, really good game. And it has a short campaign of, I think, 20-something scenarios, if I remember correctly. And you can run it with the multiple characters that it includes. So great package overall, and I recommend it. Now, if you want a bigger experience, you also have Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion. Now, this is by far the biggest increase in complexity compared to all the other games I listed. It is my number 2 solo board game of all time. This goes on sale regularly. So you typically goes for 40, but this goes on sale for like $30, $20 very, very often. And very few games out there will pack the amount of content that this does in this heavy box. Okay, so this is the shorter version of the big box Gloomhaven campaign, and it is a bit more respectful of your time. It's only 20 something scenarios, and you should be able to finish it. You're gonna be more likely to finish it, so it offers a campaign. Now, as far as RPG elements, it's not as strong as other games. It's more of a puzzly game with hand management, but you gain gear. You have encounters with characters. There's like a story element. I don't think it's that. I personally didn't find it that intriguing, but there is a story element in there nonetheless. I don't really typically care about stories in board games, just a heads up. I just think the game's really fun. So it has elements of unlocking things and like legacy elements. So this game just has so many wonderful things. And the way that this game, even though despite its complexity, the way that the game teaches the mechanics through the spiral scenario just works out great, even if you're not that experienced with board games. And you can play this controlling 2 or 3 characters. Definitely a bit of a leap in complexity, but if you know someone who plays D&D, they already have some experience with mechanics of tabletop mechanics in general, so this should not be difficult for them to grasp. Okay, but this is a great gift, and the whole point of suggesting this is maybe your friend sometimes has trouble regularly meeting with their group of D&D players, so they can just play that anytime they want from the comfort of their home. Okay. And finally, we have Dungeons & Dragons Wrath of Ashardalon. This is part of the D&D adventure system. This is the only entry I have, but there's many others like Castle Ravenloft, Legend of Drizzt, Temple of Elemental Evil, and this typically goes for around $50 to $60, but the amount of content that you get here is nuts. Okay, you get so many miniatures, and I'm gonna talk about another category later where I'm gonna talk about miniatures for people that care about that. Okay. But the amount of miniatures that you get in this box, certain companies out there charge you like this much just for like a couple miniatures. But look at how much stuff you get here. You get tons of cards, tiles, and miniatures in this box for that price. So it really includes, so you get your money's worth for this. And it plays great solo. You get a very simplified D&D experience, and you can play one-off scenarios, and it even has a mini campaign element. Okay, it's very random, but it's very, very fun. And the rulebook's okay. There's the system there's a couple loose things in the rulebook that are not quite explained, but you can just rule on the go, and it's simple enough that I picture folks being able to grasp this, again, especially if they have some prior experience with RPGs. They'll be fine, okay? But this is one of my favorite distilled dungeon crawling experiences, okay? And I would recommend this even if you're not a RPG enjoyer in general, just overall, amazing solo board game, period, okay? But if you enjoy the D&D, if you enjoy the D&D IP or, the whole idea of RPGs, this will provide a great experience that you can play anytime from home, controlling multiple characters. Okay, there are a couple scenarios that are soloable with just one character. Okay, because the idea of controlling multiple characters might be a bit intimidating for some people. Okay, especially if they have no board gaming background. Okay, but yeah, just amazing package, and there's others that you can choose from this series of adventure games. Overall, most people land on this entry as the best overall pick. Okay, compared to the rest. So this one I would recommend. It has the most classic D&D look and enemies, but there's others you can choose from, okay? But yeah, the D&D adventure system. Amazing experience. And now, moving on to the next category. All right, and now I want to recommend a few games that might appeal to those that enjoy playing trading card games like Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh or something like that. And we all know that trading card games these days are a bit of a money sink, and it is such a pain having to drive to the LGS and arrange all of that. I sure as heck don't miss that. Thank goodness I found solo board gaming because I love Magic, but I don't love having to drive to the LGS. So maybe some of your friends find themselves in that quandary. So now I'm going to recommend some things that might scratch that itch and maybe it'll move them away from Magic. So let's start with deck builders. Okay. Now, deck builders are a category of games that what you do in them is everybody starts with a very basic deck, okay? And these games include some kind of mechanic for you to add more advanced cards to your deck. And throughout the game, your deck becomes more and more powerful. And a lot of these games kind of evoke that Magic the Gathering feel, okay? Let's start with Star Realms, okay? So Star Realms is a great package, and it has a very snappy and card play and very simple rule set. It's one of my favorite intro solo board games. I could have even included this in the first category for mere mortals, to be honest. But the sci-fi theme, might be a bit more, acquired taste or whatever. But yeah, this is one of my favorite games. Okay. And the way that you solo this is, so this is typically a dual 1v1 game, but it includes a boss, these big boss cards that you fight against, and they have very simple rules. So they have an AI behavior that, will attack your life total and whatnot. And there's different bosses included. So this is a great little package if you want a nice card game with satisfying card play, very simple rule set. And it might scratch that Magic the Gathering itch if, for whatever reason, you can't go to the LGS, okay? So there's another deck builder, okay? So, so one thing that these deck builders miss, you're not going to be constructing decks prior to playing. Deck builders don't do that, right? You're not going to be collecting cards. Everything you need is in the box. So another one is Ascension. So Ascension, there's many Ascension games in the Ascension product line, but this is my favorite because I play it digitally, but for my physical game fix, Ascension Eternal gets the job done. So basically, this is a bit of a what I would call, I guess, an anthology of some of the best cards from Ascension across all the many sets, and they've compacted this into this small, affordable package, and it offers a very simple but. Now, to be fair here, compared to Star Realms, in Star Realms, you're trying to bring your opponent's life to 0. Here, you're actually trying to have the highest score at the end, okay? And you attack monsters in the card market. So there's a bit of that like combat, if you want to call it that element. So you buy cards, you attack monsters in the market, and you have this bot that is taking cards away from you in the market. It's very simple to run. This cheap, satisfying card play, and because of the many interesting cards that they collected from all the previous sets, there's some very nice combos that you're gonna find in this. Okay, and it has that medieval fantasy art, which I love. So one of my favorite compact deck builders. Okay, I love it. And when I first got it, I was addicted to it for quite a while. I still pull it out every now and then. Now, then we have Star Wars, the deck building game. So if you want, you have your friend is a Star Wars fan, and you want to give them something that kind of scratches that TCG itch, maybe this will do it. Now, this is not conventionally soloable. Okay, you do have to use a solo mode that I made. And I put a lot of effort to make it so that it looks like something that came officially with the game. And don't take my word for it. Just go read what people say about it. I'll leave links in the description for this. And all you need to play solo is just a couple sheets. Okay, that's it. It's a very simple rule set and just a little sheet that you have to print out. And you're going to be able to solo this. Okay. And these days, this goes on sale in the holidays. And I saw this pattern last year as well. This goes on sale for way under MSRP for under $20. So if you find this for under $20, it's a steal, okay? And I love this deck builder, okay? I've had a lot of fun with the solo mode I made, and it offers that classic deck builder gameplay, okay? And it does have a couple interesting twists, okay? So I love this, and you just need to print a couple of sheets for it to be soloable. So if you're gonna gift it to someone, you can just print it for them in advance. You can print it all fancy, okay, and cut it out for them and package it neatly. Okay, so that's an option as well. All right, now moving on to things that actually they try to imitate TCGs a lot more closely. Let's start with Lorcana. Okay, now just a spoiler alert, this is one of the best experiences I've had this year. Okay, so this product came out this year. It's called Illumineer's Quest. Okay, I made a 10 or so minute video detailing it. I'll link it. Okay, if you want to hear my extended thoughts. But the summary is that this is a product that allows you to solo Lorcana, a pretty current, pretty popular trading card game. Okay, and some of these products that I'm going to name here, they borrow things from trading card games. They're not actual trading card games, but one of my favorite things in the world is when an actual trading card game offers a way for you to solo it. Okay, and this is one of those. It's not something that's trying to imitate trading card games and borrow things from it. This is an actual bona fide, however you pronounce that, trading card game that offers this boss mode where you fight against Ursula. And this is a complete package, okay? You buy this and it includes 2 decks, okay? And if your friend is a fan of Disney, this is a plus, all right, in that case. So can miss, can go wrong if you buy this for someone who likes Disney. But I played this a ton this year, and I can't wait for them to come out with more bosses, okay, beyond Ursula. And it offers that archetypal classic trading card game feel, gameplay, very akin to Magic the Gathering, but simplified, okay? One of my favorite products this year. I'm going to list this again in another list later this year. Just absolutely love this, okay? I can recommend it 100%, okay? Especially if you want to scratch that trading card game itch from home, it's up there, right? One of the best. Now, moving on to this category of games, these next 3 that I'm going to talk about, these are living card games, okay? So with this product type, there's no randomization. It's kind of like a subscription model, if you will. So they release content regularly to add to the card pool, and they have card play and gameplay that borrows from trading card games, okay? And the first one that I want to list is Arkham Horror. Now, Arkham Horror, from the 3 main LCGs that solo players love, we have Marvel Champions, Lord of the Rings, and Arkham Horror, right? So this is my, if I had to rank them, this is my second favorite out of the 3, okay? So you can buy them. This is the old core box. I don't have the newer one, but I'm going to put up a picture of what the new core box looks like. Now, the core box is a bit lacking in content, but it's a great way to introduce them to the system. And I would say that is the weakest content-wise compared to the other 3. But to me, this is the deepest out of the 3 games. So if you want a Magic the Gathering player or Yu-Gi-Oh player or whatever that wants to sink their teeth into a deep, deep game, this is definitely a way of doing it. Now, keep in mind that this is a campaign-based game, which might be a bit of an alien concept to someone who doesn't play board games or D&D. You can technically play some scenarios one-off with this, but this is designed around the fact that you're going to create a deck for an investigator and you're going to carry them through a campaign, okay? So that might be a new concept for some people, but the card play, the deck construction, unlike the deck builders that I've named so far, which Lorcana comes with pre-constructed decks, but you can just actually build any deck you want and play against Ursula, which is great. But here, there's actual deck construction as opposed to the deck builders I mentioned earlier. So you're gonna build your deck before the campaign starts, and your deck evolves throughout the campaign. You're gonna do upgrades. So there is a meta here with deck archetypes and characters, different colors. I think it's called alignments or whatever. In this game with like different types of investigators. You can think in terms of Magic, you can think of your investigator as your commander, if you will. So this is an amazing game system to get into. And if they end up liking it, they might just go, full out and buy all sorts of expansions. There's like infinite content for this by now. There's so much content out there for them to expand it. Campaign expansions, investigator expansions. So it's an amazing system. Okay, very brutal, by the way, very difficult. So if you're a Magic player, you might not be used to losing that much, but this will kick your butt, okay, if you're not prepared. But very challenging, just amazing game, okay? Now we have another couple LCGs here. Let's start with, let's start with Lord of the Rings, okay? So out of the three, this ranks third, okay? I love all of them to death, okay? But yeah, ranking them, I rank this third. It was the first one that came out that was soloable, and it does show its age a bit compared to the others. But this game does really benefit from more expansion and increasing your card pool. But I store it here now. I don't have the original box no longer, but this is very close to how Magic feels with the high fantasy setting, the art, the aesthetic, and you basically pick multiple characters, typically 3 for your deck. And each of them has what is known as a sphere of influence, or like a color, right? And based on how you pick your 3 characters, imagine playing Commander, but with 3 characters, okay? In terms of Magic the Gathering. So you pick three commanders, and based on the colors of your commanders, you build your deck, okay? Just like for the Arkham Horror and Marvel Champions, there's a lot of documentation online on databases where you can find decks. If you don't want to deal with the deck construction and they're intimidated by that, you can just, if you don't want to have to learn it, you can just go on NetDeck. But yeah, so you're going to go on quests and you're going to encounter monsters and you're going to attack. There's very thematic quests that you go on and encounters. There's cycles with different that deal with different locations of the Tolkien lore. And there's even like saga expansions where you actually relive the events from the movies. So there's an amazing system, okay? And I would say out of the 3 LCGs, the closest one to what Magic the Gathering feels like, mostly thanks to its high fantasy setting, okay? I love all 3 to death, but I prefer the other 2 in general, all right? Now, finally, we have Marvel Champions. And this is the one that I've played the most, okay? And personally, from what I've read online, anecdotally, this is what I've seen the most people get their Magic addiction cured, just this replacing Magic for them. And I think that's wonderful. I love this game. I just think that TCGs are so predatory with their business model that anytime that anybody gets out of the TCG's system, I love that. So maybe this will cure you or your friend of having to, be involved with TCGs. But there's great things about TCGs. Don't get me wrong. I've made many friends playing Magic. That's awesome. But gosh, like TCGs, especially like how many products Wizards releases these days. Conversation for another day. But yeah, it's impossible to keep up. But yeah, so this is my favorite LCG out of all of them, and this has such snappy, great gameplay. One thing that I failed to mention previously about Arkham Horror and Lord of the Rings is that in a lot of cases, you're going to have to actually pilot 2 decks, okay? Because solitaire, when you play pure solo, there are some compromises sometimes. And the more expansions you get, it diminishes that drawback, okay? Just piloting one deck becomes a lot more viable. But here in Marvel Champions, this plays great solo, okay? More so than the other 2. And it can be a bit swingy early on, depending on your collection, again. But yeah, even just with the core box out of the other 2, this plays great solo. And one thing is, out of the 3 core boxes, if you're going to get a core box for people, because I didn't really talk much about the Lord of the Rings core box, which is great. I think it still beats the Arkham Horror box as far as content. But out of the 3 core boxes for all 3 LCGs, this beats the other 2 by far. This is gonna keep them busy for a long time just with this core box. And there's like infinite expansions for this of like their favorite Marvel characters. Okay, so if they want to expand on this, they totally can. Okay, so Marvel Champions, and this is within my top 5 solo board games of all time, and one of many people's favorites, because it just scratches that trading card game itch so well. All right, and moving on, we have Skytear Horde. Okay, so now this is the Kickstarter box. Okay, with from the latest expansion with everything in it. But from retail, you're gonna have a cover that I'm gonna put up on screen that will just include the first. So you have that first box and then a standalone expansion monoliths. Okay, and you can just buy that first box for someone that if you know they enjoy Magic, and this should give them a very nice Magic the Gathering / Hearthstone feel, which the game claims it does, and I agree 100%. And there is actually a deck construction element, okay, where you combine colors and you create decks around your castles. So you basically pick a castle, and it'll tell you what colors and quantities of cards you can use, okay? And you build your deck around that. So your castle is your commander, if you will. And with the expansion, if you add it, you get even more variety of decks that you can build, okay? So if they end up liking the system, I do recommend that they get the expansion because, with just the first box, it can get like the deck construction options are a bit limited, which is the first box, but it's a great package. Don't get me wrong. And yeah, this is a game that you build plays great solo. You don't have to pilot multiple decks, and it has a great, like I said, very Hearthstone feel to its gameplay. And there's many bosses that you can fight, and different armies that they can command. So there's tons of variability with this great little system. I recommend it if you want to scratch that Magic the Gathering itch. Now, finally, we arrive at Ashes Reborn, and this is in the same vein as the LCGs, okay? This is a collectible card game, but it's not randomized, and it gets a regular addition of content over time that is not randomized. You just add to the pool of cards, okay? And now, this is not conventionally soloable, but they created this Red Rains system. So if you want to solo this, you would have to buy them this and the Red Rains product. And what that does is it adds a boss that you can fight against, very similar to, say, the Ursula boss from Illumineer's Quest from Lorcana, okay? And there's other bosses. They've released like 4 or 5 by now. And it's a very interesting... I haven't spent that much time with this. I need to do like a proper review and dive a bit deeper into this, but it really does some interesting things with the TCG genre. And it uses dice as resources, like for mana instead of lands. Like you don't draw randomly, like you actually pick your hand of cards at the beginning. You can pick any card you want for your hand. So it does some very, very interesting twists with what TCGs do, okay? Now, some people don't care too, like I actually, I've read that some people don't really care too much for like what it does, okay? Yeah, so like it does things different, like so what or whatever, right? So, surprisingly, when I was reading some of the reception to this, some people don't care for it, but I have to give it credit where credit's due. It does some very interesting twists in the collectible card game TCG formula with its gameplay. Okay, some of the design choices, very, very interesting. I have to dive a bit deeper into this, but it does offer a fantastic collectible card game like experience, and just piloting one deck. You don't have to control multiple decks like you might have to for some of the LCGs for optimal play. Okay, so that's Ashes Reborn with the Red Rains Corpse of Heroes, or whatever bosses you want to pick to pair with this. And now moving on to the next category. Next, I've gathered a few games here that I would suggest for people who enjoy the miniature painting hobby, or tabletop war games or skirmish games like Warhammer. Now, look, I think we can all agree that Warhammer, both 40k and fantasy, is one of the coolest IPs out there. It's definitely one of my favorites, but I think we can also agree that the Games Workshop business model is not the most consumer-friendly. So to that end, my first recommendation is Fallout Wasteland Warfare. So this is a miniature skirmishing game set in the Fallout universe by Modiphius. I made an extended review on this, which I'll link if you want to hear that. But what this is it offers that same cool skirmishing gameplay from the comfort of your home, thanks to an AI system that is included here. And it is very sleek, very well thought out. Now, you will have to also do a solution for terrain. This does not include terrain, But I'll say this, folks, this starter set blows out any Games Workshop starter set I've ever seen out of the water when it comes to value, okay? It includes a decent amount of miniatures of 2 factions, and it includes a bunch of tokens, cards, and a very well thought out rule set for you to play using these miniatures, okay? And unlike Games Workshop, Modifius is a bit more respectful of players by supporting the game with a bunch of free content that you can download, STLs, and documents and stats for characters. So there's a lot that you can enjoy from this system without having to buy anything beyond the core set. Well, not including terrain. You're going to have to figure something out for terrain. But this game allowed me to enjoy painting terrain for the first time. I didn't really have any reason to paint terrain until I got this. But they're still pretty decent sculpts. They're PVC, or they're not. Some of them require assembly, but not all of them do. But they're still decent sculpts to paint if you want to. But I'm more of a gameplay. I do enjoy painting miniatures, but I'm more of a gameplay guy, and this does offer a great game, even if you didn't want to do the miniature painting aspect. Now, if you don't want to play skirmishes, this also has a great campaign system where you maintain a settlement between missions, okay? So you can enjoy that as well if you want a campaign. So great package, okay? If you want that tabletop miniature, either skirmishing or campaign. So just good stuff. Next, we have Imperial Assault, and this within the top 20 solo board games of all time for me. This is a campaign dungeon crawler set in the Star Wars universe. And normally it was only multiplayer, but they added an official app where you can play a solo campaign where the app acts as the dungeon master, basically. And it'll instruct you where to place the enemies. And the cool thing about this is that it has a very skirmishy, even though it's a dungeon crawler, because of its ranged combat element, it feels very skirmishy, like the combat. And there is some melee elements to it. There are some characters and enemies that are melee based, but it is mostly ranged. There's a big focus on ranged combat here, and because of that, it feels very skirmishy. Now, the game actually includes a skirmish mode, okay, but that's not technically officially soloable. And there are analog solo options for this if you download a fan-made deck and rule set that you can print out, and it allows you to solo this without using an app if you don't want to use an app, okay? But on top of the official app, there is a fan-made app that allows you to play the multiplayer content solo. And there's just a lot of content just from the base game. You get a ton of sculpts, and if you're a Star Wars fan, they're just a delight to paint. So if your friend, this system has been around for a while, but if you or your friend haven't heard about this game, it's still in print. So get it while you can, because it's I don't know with how old it is. I don't know if they'll still print it. They'll still keep printing it, but it's just such a great system, okay? And there's tons of expansions for it if you want to add more sculpts and more campaigns. So highly recommended. One of my favorites. Next, we have Dungeons and Dragons: Wrath of Ashardalon, and I did bring this up for my D&D players list. But again, when you compare for the price of this, how much you get versus like just a few miniatures from other certain companies out there, this you just get so much more with this box in comparison. Okay, and you get an actual well thought out rule set and game system where you can do individual missions or campaigns. And the fantasy sculpts here, although of course they're not as good as other sprue miniatures, they're just amazing still, and should be a joy to paint. I don't typically paint miniatures myself, only with certain games. I did not decide to paint, but I know people will just paint whatever miniatures come their way. Okay, so you'll get tons of miniatures, and as I mentioned earlier, a great D&D, simple D&D campaign and adventuring system that you can just play by yourself, controlling multiple characters. So one of my favorites. Okay, so I've also included this here, even though it doesn't exactly fit the other games category-wise, but I wanted to include this because maybe you have a friend who likes Star Wars X-Wing, okay? And, that's a whole hassle, as I said, with going to LGSs when I was talking about Magic, having to drive to the LGS and organize that. Well, this Star Trek Alliance Dominion War campaign, and this is box 1 out of 3. Okay, there's 3 boxes with different campaigns and different ships that are included. For Trekkies, which I'm not myself, but for Trekkies, this you can't go wrong with this. So you control a couple of ships through a few missions, and this comes with an AI system that controls the enemy ships, okay, and it's very well thought out, okay, and you'll need a big table for this, but if you want to get that ship combat fix, you can definitely do it with this, and it has that Star Trek code, all right? So this is a very unique game in my collection. I don't have any other game in my collection that does this, but this is very, very sweet, really cool product, well thought out AI, and just cool game system in general. I've played X-Wing myself, and it's just a cool, very, very cool system, and the fact that you can solo it, it's amazing. So that's Star Trek Alliance, Dominion War campaign. All right, and finally we arrive at Shadows of Brimstone. So this is within my top 10 solo board games of all time. This is my favorite dungeon crawler. And this is an amazing system that offers a procedurally generated emerging story campaigns where you control 1 to 4 characters, and you will have this phase between dungeon crawl missions where you go to a town and events happen and you can visit vendors and whatnot. But it is just such a rich system, and the emerging stories that this tells are amazing. But one of my favorite aspects of this, so this is a lifestyle game. It comes with unassembled sprue miniatures, and they are almost pretty much up there on par with Games Workshop quality, okay? And it checks out because the guy who designed it, he worked for Games Workshop at some point. And one really cool about the combat system here, when you dungeon crawl, it gave me a Warhammer vibe, like the way that you roll for damage, like you roll tons of D6s, and the way that you roll for defense and armor, it gave me like some serious Warhammer vibes. So if you have players who enjoy the Warhammer gameplay, they'll feel the familiarity here. It's really cool. And if they want to also scratch that itch of painting miniatures, this game system will offer it with a vengeance. Okay, so there's so many models that you can buy for this to expand your menagerie of monsters that you'll find in the dungeon, or the heroes that you can control while dungeon crawling. There's even terrain elements that you can buy and paint. So this is just such a sweet system. And there's a Western core box. There's also a feudal Japan core box. There's also a Conquistador Spain core box, and also a Viking core box. And I actually recommend the Conquistador and Viking boxes if you can, because there's a settlement element, like you have a town that you manage in between missions with that makes the in-between dungeon crawling element, like in between mission part of the gameplay, richer than this, okay? But this is one of my favorite systems of all time, and this respects your intelligence and your wallet way more than any Games Workshop product, okay? It provides a quality, well thought out rule set and amazing miniatures to boot if you want to do your hobbying, okay? So that's Shadows of Brimstone, one of my favorite games of all time. And now, moving on to the next category. All right, so for this category, I wanted to combine 2 things. One, I want to show you some video game, board game adaptations that are soloable. And at the bottom of the stack, I have some board games that play great solo, that should be great gifts for people that are already seasoned board gamers, and those games are not based on any particular IP. They're just great games in general. So I'll start with the video game-based board games. And I want to remind you of the Fallout board game that I mentioned earlier. Okay, we did just come off of that category, but in case you're skipping around categories, make sure that you look at this Fallout Wasteland Warfare board game. It's great. And there's also a Fantasy Flight game Fallout board game out there, but I would personally recommend the one I just showed you over that one. Okay. I also made a comparison video between the two if you want to look at that. Okay, that other game is pretty great as well, but they kind of check different boxes. So I'll leave the link to the comparison. Here we have Resident Evil, the board game, and this is for the second entry in the video game, and this is actually the first entry that got adapted into a board game. They've since adapted Resident Evil 3 and Resident Evil 1. So you can buy any of them. I think you can't go wrong with any. You just buy the one that appeals to you the most. But this is the only one that I have and I actually quite liked it. So it is a great horror survival game in board game form, and it really does justice to the video game IP. It is pretty scary. You have to preserve your ammo just like in the video game. Sometimes it's best if you avoid combat, and there's a campaign that follows the video game some more or less, and there's different enemies, and you can control multiple characters. It tells some pretty crazy stories. It kind of is a dungeon crawler, like a survival dungeon crawler in a way. You explore areas of the map, and there's objectives. It really is. I think it's a lovely video game adaptation in board game form. It's definitely not perfect, but I would recommend it. And if you're a fan of the IP, I think you're gonna like it. It's not the easiest game, by the way. Like if you give it to a complete newbie who's never played a board game, it might take them some effort to internalize this game. But I personally loved it. I would recommend this. Next, we have World of Warcraft, Wrath of the Lich King. And Warcraft is one of my favorite IPs of all time, more so than anything, the RTS side of it, more than World of Warcraft. But if you have a buddy or a loved one who's a fan of Warcraft, I think this is a really cool game. So this is based on the pandemic system. And what you're doing is you're in Northrend, okay? You're in Northrend, and you're moving around heroes of the Alliance and the Horde who are trying to basically hold back Arthas, the Lich King forces, okay? And you're gonna roll dice for combat, and each hero has special powers. You're trying to clear and maintain the area before it becomes overwhelmed by bad guys, and then you have to, at the end, confront the Lich King in Icecrown Citadel. Okay, so it's very cool, and it has a relatively simple rule set. It has lovely miniatures, by the way. I could have even thrown this in there with the miniature category. It has amazing sculpts, and it's just a relatively easy to learn game and a great use of the IP, in my opinion. Okay, love this, especially as a gift. I think you can't go wrong. Next, speaking of video game IPs, again, we have Dark Souls, the card game. Now, I know that there's also Dark Souls, the board game. I've heard mixed things about that. It's also soloable. It comes with miniatures. It's like a dungeon crawler situation. But I've not played it, and I've heard mixed things about it. But I can personally 100% recommend Dark Souls, the card game. So it's purely card driven, and you're gonna have one or two characters. You technically could play with one character, but I think it's best if you play it with two. And you basically have your character is represented with a deck, okay? And your deck will act as your life total, and you have to build your deck with gear and with these stamina cards with different symbols. And when you go out into the explore the world, you're gonna encounter monsters, bosses, which will give you souls, like a currency, that you can invest in better cards. So they're in between missions. You improve your deck, you grow your deck, which makes your life total bigger and lets you add cards, more stamina cards. It's such a fascinating system. I really, really like this. And it benefits from the expansions, but you could just buy the core set. And if you know someone who's a fan of the IP, I think this is a great gift. Okay, it's a bit more low profile than buying them like a big box game. And yeah, I think it's a good use of the IP. It's not perfect. I wish that it was a bit better when you played pure solo with one character, but controlling two characters works just fine. So lovely, lovely game, interesting dungeon crawler, and it kind of evocates the boss battles where you can read the boss, learn the boss patterns, the way that they move. It even translates that in board game form, which is very interesting. But yeah, I highly, highly recommend this. It's one of my favorite dungeon crawler games that is purely card driven. Dark Souls, the card game. Okay, so now we finished the video game part of this category. Now I want to talk about these games that are just great solo board games. And I recommend these for someone who already likes board games in general, and you know that they are seasoned board gamers and they have stuff beyond Monopoly, and they started with Catan, and they've added some games in their collection, and you want to gift them great solo board games, okay? And now, first, I want to recommend Horizons of Spirit Island. This tends to go on sale pretty often, so if you wait for for like Black Friday or something, you should find this at a decent price. It goes on sale on Target as well. I think they still sell it there if I remember correctly, but so this is a entry into the Spirit Island system, and it's a extremely well thought out and just cool and crunchy game where you're basically trying to stop settlers, right? So you're controlling these spirits that are trying to repel these settlers from destroying nature and building cities, and you and the natives unite against them. And theme aside, it's just a great, very crunchy game. And this package is a great intro to it because there's spirits from the original base game that could be a bit more complex, okay? So the spirits that you control here that are included are a bit lower complexity, but they're still super fun to play. So this is a great intro to that system if you want to buy someone on a semi-budget, level, give someone an intro to that system and give them just a great board game. This is an amazing package, okay? I can recommend that 100%. Okay, so now we've arrived at this bottom layer here where we have 3 solo-only games. So these are not multiplayer games, okay? Let's start with Warp's Edge. So Warp's Edge is a sci-fi themed bag builder. So it's like a deck builder, but it uses these chips that you put in a bag instead. And you buy these chips over the course of the game, and you draw them out from the bag, and they basically represent the actions that you can do with your ship. And you're trying to defeat a mothership, and it's little fighter ships that defend it. And you have various ships that you can pick to play the game with different stats like shield, hull damage, and different abilities. So very, very interesting game, and it's just one of those solo only games. You don't have to worry about AI or anything like that. There's no compromises. It's a great solo only game. Great gift. I recommend it. Okay. Next we have Under Falling Skies, another solo only game, and this one is crunchy, okay, and tough. This is a tough game, and it includes a campaign element as well, okay? So you can play one-off games. You're basically controlling this base, rolling dice. You roll dice, and your dice act as workers that you place in these spaces, and you can use them for shooting ships down or making upgrades. So you're trying to complete the objective before the mothership goes down and kills you, basically. So there is this campaign element where there's like a story to it, and you gain characters that give you bonuses to your base. I never completed it. I only started a campaign for a few missions, but I found that was a nice inclusion. So there's a great package, and you can find it, and it's pretty affordable in my opinion. So if you know someone who really likes board games and you want to give them a nice solo-only game, this is one of the best you can get them. And finally, we have Final Girl. So now, Final Girl, I've spent very little time with this. I've only played it a couple times, but I do have to bring this up because this is a very, very amazing system. Okay, so in Final Girl, you're gonna buy these feature films, okay, which you need to buy the core box and at least one feature film. The recommended one to start with is the Happy Trails Horror, okay? And it will include 2 Final Girls, a location, and a bad guy, okay? So the feature films can be combined, like the Final Girl, the bad guy, the locations. But what you do here is, it's a horror movie simulator. And there's many feature films based on your favorite horror movies like Friday the 13th, Freddy Krueger, Nightmare on Elm Street. There's The Thing, there's Alien. So there's all of these Poltergeist. There's all of these feature films based on horror movie favorites. I'm not a horror movie guy, but I still have to recognize how cool this system is. It's super thematic. And because it's based on horror, you're gonna lose a lot, okay? Some people might not be used to that, but it's extremely thematic, what it accomplishes with the relatively small amount of components, okay? And it is very cool how like the map is just a magnet, right? That you attach to the box like this, okay? And then you have the bad guy board, and it's a magnet like that. So the engineering aspect of the game is really cool. And it has that element where you buy the core box, it's like $20, I think, and then you buy a feature film, and then over time you can buy more feature films. And of course, if you haven't noticed, it has that almost like VHS-sized box. That is such a cool detail. But yeah, this is lovely, and it's a solo-only game, no multiplayer element to it. Pretty tough, horror-based, and great recommendation if you want someone, if you know someone who likes board games and likes horror flicks, you can't go wrong with this. And now moving on to the next category. All right, so I realized while editing that I forgot to mention this game when talking about board game, video game adaptations. This Slay the Spire, the board game. And this just came out this year, and it's one of the best board game, video game adaptations. And it's just an amazing game in its own right, period. Some component quality issues aside, this is just an amazing package. It plays so well solo. There's tons of content. It's the rules are a breeze to learn. And now it's not the cheapest, so do keep that in mind. But this is just an amazing game. So do make sure to keep this on your list. And yeah, if you are a fan of the IP or you know someone who is, this is an amazing gift. So that's Slay the Spire, the board game. All right, so finally we've arrived at the stocking stuffers category. I've been looking forward to this. So now before we get into the contents of what I was able to fit here, I do also want to point out these two games that I brought up in previous categories. I checked, and yes, these do fit in a stocking if you want to treat them as a stocking stuffer present. Okay, so now let's check what I was able to fit in here. Okay, so first we got, okay, awesome. So this is Kingdom Legacy Feudal Kingdom. Okay, and this is a game that came out just this year. I made a video review on it, which I'll link, but this game does some amazing things. So it is a purely card-driven game, and it basically, you start with a kingdom of 20 cards, and then as you progress at the end of each game, you unlock more cards for your kingdom, okay? And you're trying to improve the parts of your kingdom, like the buildings. Like each card basically has many sides that you rotate to represent that they've been upgraded. And you add stickers, you use like a Sharpie to mark on the card. So like this is a legacy game where cards get permanently altered, all right? So you can't replay this per se, although you could if you use sleeves. I cover all of these details in the review. But this is one of the best solo board games that has come out this year. And it costs, like if you buy it from a board game online retailer, it should set you back like $10. But I think I've seen it on Amazon too, a bit more expensive. But this is a great gift for someone, especially if they already are familiar with board games. I'm not 100% sure I would give this to someone who doesn't play board games in general. But this is such a good game, and it's so cheap. It's just an amazing experience. One of the best that has come out this year. Okay, let's see. Next, we have Palm Island, right? So there's an in-hand game, okay, where you have 18 or so cards, and you're gonna go through your cards and improve them, okay? So much like in Feudal Kingdom, same thing. You take a card and you rotate it to represent that you have upgraded it, and you're trying to get the highest score possible at the end. It's a solo-only game, although there's like a multiplayer element to it, but it's mainly a solo-only game, and it's super portable. You can carry this in your pocket. Okay, it comes with a little wallet. This is the deluxe version with plastic cards. This is the one that I recommend myself. Okay, this is one of the best portable games that you can buy that's widely available on Amazon and board game retailers. So I recommend this 100%. It's one of my favorite solo board games. Okay, next we have let's see. Okay, so this is Mint Works, all right? So Mint Works, this is a worker placement game that fits in a tin, and there's a pretty widely available game, all right? And it comes with a solo bot, all right? That will simulate an opponent and will be pretty challenging, okay? And for workers, it uses these little wood tokens that, they look like mints, right? So it's a cute little game that's relatively easy to learn. I don't know why it has a piece of tape. There must be a story behind that, but I'll remove it. Okay. All right. So that's Mint Works. Next, we have this is ultra tiny epic galaxies. Now I repackaged this game into this little container because I wanted to sleeve it. All right. But it comes in a package that I would say is like 30% smaller than this. It's like the size, like when you buy like a bicycle deck, it comes in a box that's that size. It's pretty small. Okay. And this is like a smaller version of Tiny Epic Galaxies. Okay. And it's a nice little like worker placement game. Very cute, like dice rolling and worker placement game. So it's one of my favorite portable games, and it comes with a very neat solo mode that has an automa. All right. All right. Next, we have Button Shy Games, and I know I have another one in there. Let's see. All right, cool. So Button Shy Games. Now you're not gonna find this in online retailers, okay? So you have to buy this directly from the publisher. I'll leave a link. So just go on Google and type Button Shy. So these are wallet games, and they have many games that are soloable. These are the two that are my absolute favorite. These are the two that I recommend, okay? If you're gonna buy someone a Button Shy game, okay? I also recommend Skulls of Sedlec. I don't know why I didn't throw it in there. But yeah, Skulls of Sedlec or these two, you can't go wrong. I absolutely adore these two Button Shy games, okay? Some of my favorite. But yeah, they're 18 card ultra portable wallet games. So, but you're gonna have to buy directly. It's not gonna be on Amazon or anything like that, okay? And let's see, and finally we have, so just to show you it's flat, that's the last one, we have Orchard, okay? So Orchard is a 9-card solitaire game, and technically there's more cards in there, right? So basically in Orchard, you shuffle this 18-card deck and you pull out 9 of them. And basically you have to place these cards like tiles, basically. Just it's like a tile placement game, kind of, but in card form. And you have to place these colorful dice in there, right? When you place the cards, and you're trying to place them in such a specific way that you get the highest score possible by rotating the dice. Okay, it's a very, very simple and quick game that's very portable. It has low table footprint, and it's super. I could even throw this in the first category at the beginning of the video with games for mere mortals. You could even add this. I would even say maybe even Palm Island. You could throw those two in that first category. Okay, I just didn't want to have so much overlap between the categories, so I saved this for the stocking stuffers. Now, there's a couple other games in this series, okay, by the same designer, and you can you can't go wrong with any of them. All right, I'm gonna leave up the pictures of the other two that he's designed. But this is the one that I gravitate the most toward. Okay, but a great little portable game. All right. So that's it, folks. That's my list, and I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you can find some solo board games to treat yourself or to give to your loved ones. I want to thank you so much for watching. If you have any comments, questions, feedback, go ahead and put them in the comment section. Tell me what gifts you would recommend in the solo board gaming sphere to other people for your loved ones. Any other gifts that you think I missed, please let me know in the comment section. And if you enjoyed this content, please make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.